And welcome to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. This is May 14th, 2020, Season 2, Episode 20, Media Half-Truths and Online Peer Pressure is the topic of discussion this evening. And tonight we're going to be answering questions, and we're going to be reviewing books from Allegiance Comics and Scout Comics and some Dark Horse stuff as well. And we're going to be talking about a variety of other subjects. We may or may not have a guest or two this evening. The door's open. They're welcome to come in. All they have to do is knock on the StreamYard door, and they're welcome. They'll be brought on. Or if they want to just chat in the YouTube chat room, they are more than welcome to do so. But before we go any further, let me state as always that in accordance with the new COPPA regulations, this episode of Quoth the Raven is intended for ages 16 and up. While some of the content we will feature is quote-unquote kid-friendly, the context of our episode is to address and educate older teens and adults to inform them of said content for them to research as consumers in service of their youth. In other words, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, teachers, librarians, etc. And there is always the possibility of adult language present on the episode as well. Rated TV 16 and up. That being said, let's go ahead and go straight to our questions. And my computer is playing fun games as usual. But we'll get there. Our first question of the night is from Tony C. And he says, hello, did you see the article on Bleeding Cool about how comics writers are now going to be part of the Science Fiction Writers of America Writers Union? I was wondering what your thoughts on that might be, seeing as how you work in both comics and the SF market, and why they decided that writers and not artists can join. Well, part of the reason I did the topic of saying media half-truths is because that article in question, which we're going to take a look at in just a moment, isn't entirely accurate. And we're going to go into that. And so without too much further ado here, let me go ahead and stop that screen and share a different screen with you guys. There we go. Let me see if I can get that silly ad out of there for us. There we go. All righty. Now, the article is by Rich Johnston, the head writer of Bleeding Cool. And recently they had their annual elections, and one of the questions that was posed is, should the SFWA allow writing of graphic novels and comics in science fiction, fantasy, horror, and related genres to be used as a qualification for membership? And it was an almost unanimous vote of 95.18% for yes versus 4.82% for no. But Rich then adds, just writers, though, not artists. This is not accurate. Artists can be members of the Science Fiction Writers of America. They can only be affiliate members at this time, however. Now, I don't know the exact differences between a full member and affiliate membership is. I have contacted the current president, Mary Robinette Kowal, via email. Have not heard back from her yet. There's a very good probability because of this vote that there are procedures to make new amendments to the bylaws of the SFWA to account for comics. I don't know that. That's hopefully what I'm going to hear from her in the upcoming days. I'd like to hopefully we'll have her on as a guest and we can discuss that further point. Let's get back to the article. He says that the organization works as a guild, informing writers on professional matters, protecting their interests, and helping them deal effectively with agents, editors, anthologists, and publishers, etc. This is true, but you also have to remember that they aren't just doing that for their writers. Like I said, they do have an artist side to the SFWA with the affiliate membership, and I don't think they have the same full access to some of the legal advice, maybe. But again, I don't know the full details. I'm waiting to hear back from Ms. Kowal on that. But what he's leaving out here is basically a tone that comics artists aren't going to be included in this. And that's just not, I don't see where that's going to be the case at all. Okay? So that's kind of a half-truth and a misnomer that he's presented, either through ignorance of not doing his research of what the SFWA actually is, or just jumping the gun and doing speculative writing as opposed to proper journalism, which we all know Bleeding Cool is not a real journalistic site. And he doesn't claim to be a journalist, but we still need to hold him accountable to these things. Now, he goes into the details of the emergency medical fund, legal fund, estate projects, other things that the SFWA does. And then he ends his article with, might it have an influx of comic book writers any day now? No, you're not going to have an influx because, like I said, there's going to have to be amendments to the current bylaws. Now, I'm going to go into the details of that in just a moment because I have to go back to a different screen if I can find it. And apparently, I don't have it here. That's not good. Let me see real quick here. Nope, they're not here. That is odd. Let me see if it's in your part. Nope, it's not. Okay. For some reason, it's missing. That's okay. We'll just go ahead and address it without the information on the screen then. Now, part of the thing is in the bylaws, it says that a writer must be paid either in advance or upon publication of a certain set of money or a certain whether that's when I say a certain rate, I mean a certain dollar amount or a certain amount that reaches to 8 cents per word. Now, many comics publishers, most notably Image Comics, which is the third largest publisher in the country right now by percentage of market share of sales, do not pay their writers anything up front in advance or upon publication. You get paid back-end money, so to speak. In fact, the way Image is set up, by the guidelines of the SFWA, that would be considered a vanity press organization and would be subsequently disqualified from being considered. And that's why I say, no, they're going to have to do some amendments to adjust, and they're going to have to get some people who work in comics and science fiction extensively to educate how to do that category separately from the categories that are already there and still be in alignment with what the current structure of the SFWA is. Okay. Now, there are another bylaw, I think there's a Section 3 bylaw that says for like self-publishers, as long as you can present your documentation of how much you made and you have a minimum of 1,000 copies sold and you can prove that and that you earned a certain amount of money, your book will be considered for qualification. And there's other things as well, but I think what's going to need to be happening is they're going to have a committee help determine the amendments and have those amendments ratified by the membership before we have any writers brought in. And exactly how long that's going to take, well, again, I just said they just had their election. I don't know if Ms. Kowal was reelected or if they're going to have a transition to a new president or a new, membership of, running the organization. And even if either way, I don't think anything will be happening until at least the turnover for the organizational year, which is in July. So I don't think we're going to see it until probably late this year, maybe early next year before anything really happens. But we'll wait and see. Now, a lot of people who are actual writers in both businesses have said, hey, that's great. We'll wait and see what happens because they understand these things. But a lot of fans, this was not the only question I got. This is one of the more civilly written versions of the question. I got asked a lot of negative connotation to that, to this topic. Like, well, why should writers get a guild and not the artists and other stuff, and that's why I put this question on this week's Q&A, was because of that misconstruing of half-hassery that Rich does. So hopefully I've cleared up a little bit more for you, Tony. And as soon as I hear from Ms. Kowal or I hear from another member of the leadership of SFWA to those terms, and I can bring them on to the show, I'll be happy to do so. Okay? Our next question comes from Jake. I heard that new lunar distributors might be taking on publishers that Diamond doesn't represent in future. Do you think that this is a positive step for the market? Absolutely. It would be a positive step for the market if retailers take advantage of it. As I've said in previous episodes, there's a ton of content out there that Diamond doesn't represent. Diamond doesn't represent over 90% of comic books that are produced in North America. A lot of us are either digital exclusive, or we're print on demand, or we're self-distributed, crowdfunded and self-distributed, and that content isn't available through Diamond, and a lot of retailers are choosing to either ignore that content exists, or having an attitude problem, in my opinion, that they don't want to sell that content. And I think that's with DC opening the door to that, and a lot of people have been complaining about DC doing that, a lot of peer pressure from name people, name pundits, major retailer names, certainly Jeppy at Diamond, being against this, and they're not really being open-minded to the situation and what's best for our overall industry, in my opinion, in that respect. And when you get a lot of people doing that, it can potentially deter the ability of certain companies to expand and do things properly. With DC opening this door, it has the potential to give someone else an option to get all the other content, at least a chance to get through the door and be seen and considered equally, even if it doesn't mean that retailers will actually order it or not. hopefully the retailers will wisen up, but that remains to be seen. Next question. Mark T. Nelson from Columbia, South Carolina asks, did you come across the news that Scout Comics is going to be self-distributing their titles like Alterna does? Is this going to be a new trend in the comics industry? And how do you think it's going to affect the direct market comic shops? Yes, I was made aware of the Scout distribution situation. I have contacted them, and I am now receiving promotional materials from Scout, and I'll be able to do a little more reviews of their books, and I'll be doing some reviews of their books this evening and next week as well. Is it a trend in the industry that everybody's going to start doing their own self-distribution? Not yet. It could become a trend, but right now it's in the infancy of that, in a way. I mean, technically, if you want to count all the crowdfunding fulfillment, then it's not a trend that's upcoming, it's already here. But if we're talking about publishers who had been with Diamond or are still going to be with Diamond, because Scout's still with Diamond, they're not exclusive self-distributing like Alterna, to my awareness. They're just doing it in addition to their Diamond order, which is certainly a plausible and feasible thing to do. But I think most publishers should be doing that anyway, but that's neither here nor there for the moment. The problem, though, is, and this is what retailers are going to pound their fist on the table for, is that they can't afford to order from each individual party, which takes us back to Lunar. And whether or not we can get a umbrella distributor that can handle that and give a proper discount rate to the mass marketer, mass market brick and mortar industry or not, because Diamond has had no interest in doing that for 25 years. And that's, and the question becomes, are the retailers going to buck the trend that is developing, or are they going to embrace it? And it just depends on what each segment of the whole of our, I'm trying to think of the word, not ecology, but the whole of our body of this industry and fandom and everything gets embraced. It might just end up that these self-distributing are just like subscriptions to the readers directly and has nothing to do with retail. We don't, or it might be like what I used to do in the 90s, where I did subscription and mail order to retail stores that weren't comic shops. There's a whole lot of different directions this can go. So we'll just have to wait and see. Next question. Josh from Savannah, Georgia asks, have you read any of TKO Comics' releases yet? Why or why haven't you? They're a major upcoming publisher in the market right now, and it seems that you're missing the boat on that one. Also, what are your thoughts that they are giving 50% of their online sales to comic shops to aid them during the pandemic? Well, let me first address the second question, and that is, what do I think of them about what they're doing to aid retailers during the pandemic? I think that's a good move on their part. I give them, two thumbs up on that. And as far as why I haven't covered them, to be honest with you, a lot of their creators are people that, while they're certainly credible creators and they're respectable, and I don't wish to dismiss them or diss them in any way, I've kind of gotten burned out on them, particularly the writers. And because I'm burnt out on them, I haven't really been interested in picking up those books at this time. That doesn't mean that the books stink or that nobody else should read them. And that this kind of this kind of goes into media representation and peer pressure. People saying, "Well, you should be reviewing this stuff." Maybe I should be, but if I do so begrudgingly, am I going to give them a proper review or not? I might not. And if I'm already predisposed to not liking something because of being overexposed and being tired of a certain writer or a certain artist, that might not be what's best for business for me as a media representative or podcaster, and certainly isn't necessarily going to be for the best interest of the publisher or the creators. And so for me to be fair, and then I step back from that and let other people review that. Now, again, that doesn't mean I won't review their works at all. It just means I haven't found the right things to order or haven't had the right amount of interest yet. But I'm sure that someday I'll be covering some of their books, and I certainly have nothing negative to say about them as a company. Mm-hmm. Next question is from Sean in Chula Vista, California. Have you seen the new Allegiance comics that are on sale at Walmart? I heard they were Comicsgate comics and that I shouldn't be supporting them. And how come they're only at Walmart and then only at certain stores? What's the deal? Mm-hmm. Now, this is a politer version of some of the emails I've been getting about Allegiance Comics product. I've been threatened, bullied even, telling me not to cover their books because if I do, I'll be a Comicsgate supporter or whatever. So let me address that whole notion for you, Sean. There is a lot of negative sentiment in the public eye towards the founder members, Mitchell and Elizabeth Brittweiser, because of their supposed association with Comicsgate. I think Comicsgate is the stupidest damn thing as far as people, yay or nay, I'm going to support you or not support you because of this, that, or the other. You have to judge the books on their own individual merits. And if you don't like a person because of something they said on social media or something they said at a convention that you directly heard, or they did something that was actually proven that they did something, like criminally wrong or something, and you choose not to support that person and their work, you're entitled to do that, and you have every right to do that, and I don't begrudge you doing that. But, we'll go back to this, I heard that they were Comicsgate comics and that I shouldn't be supporting them. That means that Sean was being picked at and being bullied and saying, you don't get the right to make your own mind up. We're telling you, whoever these other people that told him these were Comicsgate books not to buy them, they're telling him, you're not allowed to buy that, or we're going to bully you and judge you and make sure that your life is miserable because you chose to support that. That is a problem in comics fandom today. That is a problem in our society, and we don't need that. Because when you have a company like Allegiance that is now going into the general public, into Walmart, that is not part of our little clique group that is Comics Dorkdom, and you start seeing people behave towards normal society that way, you're not just hurting Allegiance's books, you're hurting the entire medium of comics and what we represent as an art form. That is why we can't have that kind of behavior anymore. You got to grow up. You have the right to make your own choice for yourself. You do not have the right to impose your will and your choices upon others just to satisfy your own peace of mind or your own interests. Okay. And we're going to get back into, and we're going to talk about Allegiance Comics, all 4 titles tonight. And we're going to talk about some more of what has been said about Allegiance briefly when I get to that. But we're not going to be focusing on it too much because I don't believe in it. And again, I'm going to hopefully be demonstrating to you guys what a true unbiased representation is for a podcaster or a representative for our medium in podcasting or journalism. Okay, that's what I'm going to try to do. Hopefully, I'll be successful. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we got any more questions. Yes, we do. It's Retailer Rob. Retailer Rob says, you keep saying that retailers should diversify their available distribution options and order titles that Diamond doesn't carry and stuff. Is that really what you would do if you ran a store yourself, or are you just ranting? It's absolutely what I would do if I was running a store. In fact, if I ran a store, 25% tops would be my Marvel and DC combined. Okay? And maybe 30% of the rest of the catalog would be half of my store. And then the other half would be stuff from indieplanet.com, lulu.com, Amazon type stuff, if I can get them, and direct orders from publishers that aren't available through Diamond. Now, how I would market myself, I would market a lot of standalone titles that are for different age groups and different types of interests and taste of people. Now, I don't have the money to do all that stuff right now. It's certainly not in this moment, and I don't necessarily expect retailers to do it in these times of a pandemic. I understand they can't do it right now, but they need to be thinking in the future. They, not just in the here and now, because a lot of them have been ignoring this option to them for so long that they've put themselves behind the 8 ball. Okay, Rob? And so what I am suggesting is that instead of being pigeonholing your distribution through one channel at the exclusion of everything else, learn how to bring in this stuff and learn how to market it instead of expecting us to market everything for you so that you just have to order, sit back, and collect your sales from people who may or may not order your books. Now, understand, I'm not dismissing the difficulties of running retail. Retail is not an easy thing to do. All I'm trying to do is say that there are means that can be more beneficial and help you run a better operation than just doing what has been the norm for the past 25 years. Okay? I think that is our last question. Let's check. Nope, we have one more. And it's another question I normally get. They watch other podcasts, they see a wider array of creators. I bring on a lot of same people. Why is that? The reason why is because of who's available and who wants to come on when they're available. I try to get people on all the time. Just stick with us, Anonymous. We'll see who we can bring on. Okay. And I think that is our last question. It is. So if you have a question, please email them to quoththeravenlbr72@gmail.com. Subject QTR questions. Please indicate whether or not your name and locale read on air. Let's see what else we have today. Here we go. All right, we're going to go ahead and head for our reviews a little bit. and we're going to go back to the Allegiance tab here. All right. Now, I said we're going to address some of those things first, so let's do that. There are some controversial aspects surrounding the founders of the company, as I said a little bit earlier. How they've operated their company via crowdfunding and their possible connections to the so-called Comicsgate movement. Well, firstly, let's address the operating with crowdfunding moment. Allegedly, the books were crowdfunded first before they were able to sign their deal with Walmart for distribution. Many fans have expressed exasperation. They've been disgruntled over this as their Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaigns allegedly were not fulfilled as expected or have not been fulfilled to date. Now, based on what I have been able to find online, okay, that might be a legitimate concern. And I feel like the fan investors maybe should have received their goods before mass market release to Walmart. However, and I want to be clear of this, I do not believe this is causation for fans to tell the general public who are buying books through Walmart or are buying, even comic book fans who know that this stuff was going on and are choosing to buy at Walmart, should not be purchasing the books, and we shouldn't be attacked or belittled for supporting said products. I understand your frustration. I understand if you backed these books and didn't get what you were promised and you feel like you've been cheated. That's a legitimate grievance, and you have every right to say that you're not going to support that company for those reasons, okay? But you do not have the right to tell me or anyone else that we can't support it just because you're not happy. Okay, it's like saying, I don't like X-Men, you shouldn't buy X-Men. Okay, whatever, it's, and I see a lot of that kind of pressure online. I see a lot of people, who actually told me, don't review Allegiance books or we're going to talk bad about you. It's my job to talk about comics. What the heck, sounds stupid that you would do that. But okay, Now, while I certainly hope that the Britweisers and the rest of the Allegiance staff that are in charge of fulfilling all of these crowdfunding situations will fulfill their obligations and maybe even make additional bonuses for fans who back them on the crowdfunded platforms. Tonight, I intend to focus on the content of the books in our reviews, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying any more about that. Secondly, I'm not going to play the anti-Comicsgate card. We're reviewing the books. Now, am I being contradictory in my nature because there are CG creators whose books I want nothing to do with? And I have said that publicly on this forum in the past. No, I'm not being contradictory. I'm not going to like every book that comes out of that camp, and there are people in that group whom I do not like personally, or to be more accurate, I don't like the personality as how they've expressed themselves online, just as there are people at Marvel and DC and other publishers whose work and personalities I do not like personally and do not wish to support or cover. So it's no different one way or the other. And so it's not an issue here of me being a CG supporter or not CG supporter. I'm just taking a product that happens to have a little bit of notoriety about it right now and reviewing it for you to consider on your own terms. Okay. And you can choose to ignore it or you can choose to avoid it because of what you've heard about Comicsgate if that's your choice. You can choose not to order or not to go seek these books out. If you read about the crowdfunding stuff and you think that the books shouldn't be out there in the market, that's your choice. I'm just here to tell you what the books are and let you know about what the books are, okay? Furthermore, there are creators at Allegiance whom I've known personally over the years and whose work I've enjoyed in the past. And I'm not going to turn my backs on them because of this. I don't think that's fair. And to do so is to be weak-willed and weak-minded, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean I'm never going to be critical of the company or the behaviors of the company or the books themselves. It also doesn't mean I'm not going to separate different creators and or books from the rest of the organization. But that being said, viewers should understand that I don't judge the creators, any creators, whether they be allegiance or otherwise, solely by their political or sociological purviews. So we're going to get straight to the books, and we're just going to talk about the books and what my impressions of the books are. Let's begin with The Futurists. Let me go ahead and get that. Outrage intensifies, Mark Andrew Smith. Ha ha ha. Very funny. Let's see. Let me see if I can get the. There we go. You guys can read everything there now. Publisher is Legion's Comics. This is season 1, episode 1. I am guessing that what they mean by season 1 is the first story arc, however long it's going to be. And since most of these books are bi-monthly, I'm going to take a guess and say they're all each 6 issues. The price is $4.98. The writer is Patrick Stiles. The concept was co-developed by Mitch Brickweiser and Patrick Stiles. The artists are Butch Geis and Rick Magyar. Colors are by Mitch and Elizabeth Brickweiser with Alex Guimarães. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The genre is fantasy / historical adventure. It is a bi-monthly series. And it just came out about a week and a half ago in Walmart stores on May 5th. What it's about. 2 long-lived mages who have sought immortality meet, and the story of one of them being cursed with immortality begins to unfold as he tells of English soldiers who raid a town in India in the 1850s and dig up a mysterious sarcophagus which releases a threatening entity. Apparently, several individuals across space and time will be sought out and team together to fend off this entity. Recommended for ages 13 and up, and I gave the book 3 stars. Let's go ahead and take a look at the art. This is artwork by Butch Geis. This is Butch penciling and inking himself. Rick Magyar comes in and does some of the ink work in the latter half of the book, probably for time schedule. I don't know. Excellent artwork, but that's kind of what I expect from Butch Geis. When he's on his game, he does beautiful stuff. Always been a fan of Butch's since his days on Swords of the Swashbucklers in the 80s at Marvel. So I'm not exactly disappointed by the artwork in any way. The coloring work by Mitch and Elizabeth Brickweiser is solid, consistent, good tonality throughout the book. Serves the purposes of fulfilling the line art and not overwhelming it. It's not necessarily directing pacing of the book, which I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit later, because some of the other books have that kind of, the colorist has that kind of influence on that book, but not so much on this one. This one, it's kind of just, it works really well as a collaborative effort. Okay. Now, conceptually, I think the book is not an interesting idea. As it plays with the themes of both immortality and seemingly time travel. I think the execution of the story, meaning the script, it's a little bit slow in development, and there may be some confusion for the audience as to who and what the story is about. there's characters at the beginning of the story. You saw in the picture the horse, the carriage bringing people. They're going to a seance with one of the mages. And I thought at first when I read it, maybe some of the people that were being in that seance were some of the people later in the story. They may or may not be. I'm not sure. But in some ways, the work feels more like an issue of backstory, and an incomplete backstory at that, rather than getting us into the story at hand, if you will. And I think that may cause some readers to lose interest. Um, it's so I don't know yet on that. As I said, Butch Guice's art is superb. Um, for me, it's what's carrying the book so far. Um, I hope it's enough to keep readers around to allow the story to unfold. But as the book is bi-monthly, I do have to wonder if the story will hold audiences' interest enough to wait for the next issue. That's why I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars. If the story were a little bit stronger um, in pacing, or a little bit more a little bit less backstory of how we're getting to where we're at and get to where we're at and where we're moving forward to, I guess you could say, I would probably have given it a little bit higher rating. Our next book is Marshall Bass Reeves. It's again 498, season 1, episode 1. Same publisher. The writer of this series is Kevin Grevioux. If you don't know who Kevin Grevioux is, Kevin is the guy who wrote for the Underworld movies, and he also did some stuff for Marvel. I think he wrote the Blue Marvel, if I'm not mistaken. He's done some other stuff as well. The artist is David Brohawk Williams. David's been around for a long, long time. Excellent artist. Really solid work. Glad that you see him on this book. The colorist is Kelsey Shannon. The genre is Western historical fiction. It is also bi-monthly. And what it's about is this series is based on the life of Bass Reeves, who was the first Black U.S. Marshal to serve his country west of the Mississippi in the late 1800s to early 1900s as a bounty hunter and lawman. It's a straight-up Western comic series, which is something the industry really hasn't seen much of in recent times, and it offers something readily separate from its contemporaries on the market. I recommend it for ages 13 and up and fans of movies like the recent Magnificent Seven with Denzel Washington, movies just the more modern Western type stuff that we've had. I'm trying to think of the ones that Leonardo DiCaprio were in and stuff, but it's that kind of a milieu. Okay, let's take a quick look here at. I gave the book 4.5 stars. I really do think it's an exceptional book. This is the artwork. And as you can see, David's style is relatively well detailed, but it's also got a very animated feel to it and could easily be used as storyboards for adaptation to make this an animated series. And, I think that's a really cool thing for that to be done. And this character is, of course, Bass hunting after certain people that he's on. This is when he's a bounty hunter, if I'm not mistaken. Now, I think that the comic series is an interesting topic and character to do a comic about. After all, this is a legitimate historical figure with a mythical, tall tale presence about his exploits. And as such, it should offer a fairly rich resource of information for the creators to do a comic book and continue the tradition for a modern audience. Graveau's script is very tight and solid. It's far and away the best scripting of the Allegiance titles. I mean, it's just head and shoulders above all the other books. David Williams is always well suited to the project. As I said, his style leads to the kind of an animation look to the work, and yet it's still grounded to the constraints of the comics medium. As I said, I could easily see his style being adapted into an animated series of this product or this storyline if it were to be optioned as a animated film or animated series. Kelsey Shannon's color palette, really strong. Throughout the book, there are recurring color schemes and patterns that actually help the story's pacing. Let me see if I can pull that out and show you what I mean. Here's the book itself. You can see kind of a paleness about this in the early pages. And the two riders on horseback are talking about a death of another law enforcement person. And that kind of leads the tone of the story, of that part of the story. And then when they talk about Bass Reeves, they go into this really dark bluish and purples tone at nighttime with really nice highlights from the fire. And some of the stories that they've already heard about this guy, how he can lift the bull out of the mud and stuff like that. And then he shows up right on this page right here. And of course, those are the 2 pages I already showed you, where he says, you have a choice. You can either surrender now or not. And the guy goes for his gun and kills him. And says, well, I got his decision. What about the rest of you? Here we are back again to a more of a pale, light talk between Bass Reeves and the law enforcement agency about him becoming a marshal and them wanting him to help them out. And again, it's pale. The lighting sources are a certain way that kind of give you a sense of timelessness and frozenness, where you linger on the page and it's more like, okay, you're reading what's on the page, but you're also thinking about what are these characters thinking behind what they're saying as well. And the tones of that lend to that kind of a subtext to the story. That's what I mean by having color help pace a story and how you read it, okay? And when we live in an industry right now where color tends to overwhelm the line art, I really find that this kind of complementary coloring to be a rarity, but a good thing. The book as a whole truly shines, and I really think that this book should not be missed. It's not a perfect book, but for a first issue, it's about as close as I think you can get. Again, this is Bass Reeves, and you can get them at Walmart, maybe. Now, one of the things I must say, they came out on the 5th of the month, and I looked through 11 different Walmarts. Oh no, 8 different Walmarts, 11 different times between the 8 different stores before I finally came across the section where they had one of the stores had it. For those of you who live in the Columbia, West Columbia, Lexington area, go to the Walmart on Lexington 378. They have them all in stock. Haven't found them anywhere else. Supposedly, they did a print run of about, I understand, 30 to 35,000 units through all the stores. And supposedly, according to Allegiance's website, other Walmarts in our area and throughout should have them. But it is my understanding that because of COVID-19, maybe some of this stock hasn't been fully delivered to the stores and put out on display yet. So we have to wait and see on that. But, at least if you're into it locally, that's where you can find it here. Mm-hmm. Our next book is Nora's Saga. The writer on this is Blake Northcott for the script and Patrick Stiles for the concept. The artist and colorist is Kelsey Shannon. Hernan Octavio does some of the color guide. He probably does the flat work, and Kelsey probably does the final look. Genre is fantasy and teen adventure bi-monthly. Nora is a teenage girl who loses her mother in a car accident as a small child and is now living with her widowed father. Her mother was a curator at a museum and loved Viking and Asgardian mythology. Nora is now transferring to a new school, and she and her dad are trying to move on from the tragedy. She doesn't fit in. Supposedly, she dresses in too old of a fashion trend, gets dissed by her fellow students at school, and she is miserable. She goes to her father and begs like a brat to be taken to the mall to buy new clothes in bad weather. Same kind of weather that they had the original accident in, mind you. Surprise, another car accident. Only now she finds herself waking up in a new world, the world of the Vikings. It's recommended for ages 12 and up. I give it a 3 out of 5. And this one is a lot like the Futurists in the sense that the writing. But let's go ahead and look at the artwork. This is a scene where she wakes up out of a nightmare, and her dad is telling her to get ready for school. I like the art by Kelsey Shannon here. It reminds me a little bit of Sean Murphy's stuff, but a series that Grant Morrison did called Joe the Barbarian. It just kind of has that same kind of vibe to it to me. You can see in the middle right of the second page here, the clothes she's got on. She's got ripped jeans, 2 shirts, a jacket, and she's putting on a cap, supposedly the grunge 90s look or whatever. I don't know. To me, it's not that big of a deal artistically. But okay. I enjoy Kelsey's work. Again, this is the part of the book that's carrying the book is the artwork. But let's get back to the thoughts. Like I said, the book suffers from similar issues that the Futurist suffers from. It's all pre-story set up as the introductory issue. The main difference is Northcott wrote a slightly better script than Stiles did on Futurists. And even then, I'd have to say the script is the weak point of the book. Conceptual, really cool idea. Execution's a little bit meh. Middle of the road type comic. It's not bad. It's not horrible. It's just middle of the road. But it is a little bit too generic, in my opinion. And as you can see, I'm a little bit skeptical of the pacing and the logic of the story here. The characters just behave in ways that don't make sense to me. You just lost your mom in a car accident in snowy weather a little while ago. It might be years ago even, but now because you're being picked on by dipshit retailer or dipshit teenagers rather. You're going to force your dad to go drive in similar conditions for what? New clothes? Personally, that jolted me out of the story, as it was just something that served to move the plot forward to a specific event and ignored all logical character behavior. The dad would look at her and go, "Really? I'm not taking you out. We just moved here. I'm still trying to get myself settled and make sure we got money to live on. You want me to drive you out in the snow to go buy new clothes? You can wait till the weekend at least." I can just see what this would normally be in a real world situation. So I wasn't really keen on that. And again, the dialogue in the teams in the book, and I'll show you what I mean here in a moment. And here's the book. In this scene right here, where she's in the cafeteria, the one in the outfit here on this the other side here, this one right here, the redhead, reddish blonde, makes a stupid remark. It's not like I can show up in ripped jeans and some droopy hat to the to school or to the formal dance. And she's talking about how cool, all the guys are talking about how cool she looks, and she comments, "Well, this is me experimenting because I gotta look good for the formal winter outfit or whatever, and I can't be found walking around in ripped jeans and a droopy hat." And they go, and of course this is supposed to affect our lead character for whatever reason. And they go, "Ooh, sick burn, Court," which is short for Courtney. And I'm thinking, that's a burn? Really? That comment bothers you? Oh, you don't like how I dress? Well, la-di fucking da. You're experimenting with new looks before a formal dance by wearing a getup that looks like a prep girl hooker outfit? Now that is a sick burn. That's what you say back to the bimbo. And that's what our lead character should be saying if she's really going to be our heroine, and she should be strong enough to make that remark back to them, but we got to make the character feel like she's alone and despondent because she doesn't have any self-esteem or something. That didn't really work for me very much, to be honest. Sorry. Now, this was my first time reading Blake Northcott's work. Based on that, I'm not that impressed with her scripting yet. Her dialogue was a little bit too stilted of a certain era of dialogue. And though it sort of fits the story, and we're talking about the teenagers here, it feels dated. Like this book should have come out about 20 or 25 years ago instead of a contemporary story. And I think that is a major weakness for the book. And again, while this was my first time reading Northcott, there's another book I'll be reviewing of hers later on in the show, so stay tuned. Kelsey Shannon, however, really shines on the artwork. Like on Futurist, the art, like I said, is what carries the title so far, and Shannon's really stepping up and looking like an unheralded superstar about to burst on the scene and get some notice that they really deserve, much like David Williams over on Bass Reeves. But even with that said, the script is, like I said, the script is weak enough that it makes it a fair to middling book instead of an exceptional book. It has the potential to be an exceptional book, but the scripting really needs to be pick itself up, or the title might wind up overlooked as a middle of the road series. Let's see what else we got. And lastly, we have The Red Rooster. Again, $4.98. The script is by Mark Pellegrini. The concept is by Mitch Brittweiser. The artist is Mitch Brittweiser. The colorist is Elizabeth Brittweiser. The genre is superhero. It's a bi-monthly book. Um, a golden age superhero named Red Rooster is bumming and subsisting in his secret identity in the modern day. And we get a flashback as to the past and why he's now in hiding. And he and his sidekick and fellow heroes are called back to investigate goings on in his hometown. And his enemies have made plans to do, well, we don't know exactly what yet, but something that will humiliate him and depopularize him anyway. And we know that it will work as he is hiding in the current day. Recommended for ages 16 and up. It's a 3-star book. Even though it's a 3-star book, it's the weakest of the 4 books, in my opinion. But let's take a quick look at it artistically. The art's good. It's solid. There's nothing wrong with it. It does have a nice kind of a Norman Rockwell painterly look to the coloring a little bit. Obviously, it's digital, but you can tell they're trying to capture a certain feel of that era. Okay. There we go. Sorry. Trying to get the actual physical book here in my hand. And this is the villains on a train going cross country. All the villains that he'd put in jail, he freed them, and they're planning their big scheme to demoralize him or whatever. It's good art. And again, here's the book. I'll show you a little bit more of the artwork. A little bit more black and whitish type thing, flashbacks to the golden age type stuff going on here. Get a bit better look maybe at the train scene again. Let me see if I can. We got some comments in here. Kevin Graveau said he acted in minimal little bit of Star Trek. That's true, but pretty much, like in the Lone Ranger is based on Bass Reeves. Yes. Sorry, I didn't see those comments in the segment. I was busy doing something else, I guess, and just didn't want to show up on the StreamYard feed. I apologize, Mark. But absolutely, the Lone Ranger is based on Bass Reeves, and again, another interesting aspect of what they're going to do with that book and where they're going to go with it. But that is getting back to the Red Rooster. They get him back to his hometown, and basically they're planning whatever they're planning here. I don't know if you can read it. Make it a homecoming the rooster will never forget. But again, it really hasn't set up much of anything. But that being said, because of the way the story is structured, and we know it's a flashback, it's better written than Futurist was. But I don't think it's like in this case the story is carrying it more than the art, or it's a little more balanced in what's carrying the story along, in both story and art, comparative to the Futurist or Nora's saga. Has a much clearer narrative. Um, it feels like it's taking place in the town it's supposed to be taking place in, whereas the other two are more confusing in that regard. Uh, the writer Pellegrini is doing reasonably work. Like I said, I find the artwork was, I think, the book is the weakest of the four titles. It doesn't mean it works bad. Everything is solid, works in service to the story at hand. It just doesn't pop visually off the page the same way the other books do. That could be due to the intent of the color palette, which, again, like I said, it feels like a Norman Rockwell painterly feel to it. And it feels a little bit muted comparative to the other series. But the story's holding my interest, and I do want to see what the villains are actually going to do to break the hero. And so, I'll give it a 3 out of 5, and we'll see where it goes. And these books, the next issues will come out in July 7th, around the July 4th weekend, thereabouts, is when the next issues are due out. Okay? Mm-hmm. Overall, with the line, I think that the overall line is pretty well executed. There's not a bad comic in the mix, though I do think Bass Reeves really stands out head and shoulders above the crowd. The other three titles have really good concepts that potentially be really strong series as well. I just think their introductory issues were pretty average comics fare in today's market in terms of scripting. But the overall artwork for the line is really what I think will keep audiences interested in the titles at this point in time. I do think they'll be facing an interesting dilemma being bi-monthly on the schedule, because I don't know how well Walmart will maintain their presence in the stores. Like I said, I had a bear of a time tracking them down locally. But if they can maintain an audience through Walmart, through their first full store arcs, I think the company will stick around for a good long while. And I hope they do. Because I don't see any bad books here. I think all of them can be very entertaining to and bring in some new blood audience to the medium. Whoops. We're going to go over to Scout Comics now. Like I said earlier, I kind of got into Scout, got on their mailer list, and they sent me some previews of stuff. I'm only going to do 2 books tonight. We're going to look at the first one, which is Everglade Angels. Whoops. Mark Andrew Smith says, so cliche with the brooding villains at the end of the book. I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of like, they're not really brooding. They're hiding in town, waiting for whatever they're going to do to make him out to be a phony or whatever it is. Like I said, they haven't really explained what they're going to do to make him lose faith in himself or whatever. But I want to see what they do with it. Yeah, but it is a trope of cliffhangers. Yes, it is. It is. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the Scout Comics line. Preview of Everglade Angels #1, $3.99. Publisher is Scout Comics. The writers are Scott Lobdell and Blake Northcott. I think they co-created it and Blake's scripting it, I think, based on what I read. Whoops, hold on a second. Okay, that was actually Mr. Williams, who said he unfortunately couldn't make an appearance this evening. But hopefully we'll have him on the show in a future time. Um, so anyway, the artist is Rock Upchurch. The genre is survivalist horror. And this book is not out yet. It'll be released either in late June or early July of 2020. So you can pre-order it now from a comic shop if you wish. Okay? Or you can go online to scoutcomics.com and probably pre-order something from it as well. What it's about: a wrong turn down a dead-end road, a car that won't start. An unspeakable evil emerges from the darkness. No phones, no weapons, no escape. Think you've seen all this before? Think again. When a girls' softball team takes a shortcut through the Florida Everglades, they veer off the path towards a night they'll never forget. Drinking, dancing, one last hurrah before college starts, and they go their separate ways. When they stumble into a trap set by a murderous cult, the stage is set for a night of blood-soaked carnage. But the cult has never dealt with victims who are ready to fight back. Well, it is kind of things you've seen before, I'm going to be honest with you, but let's go ahead and take a quick look at the book, okay? Mm-hmm. This is the first page. Now, I'm showing this as the PDF that I got from Scout because I couldn't get it to cut and paste out of the PDF to make my normal presentation. What you're seeing on the text here is like a voiceover for like a softball game that's going on while this is going on before the game with some other person that's unrelated to the story. But you can see that she's out in the swamp and the cult people are going to end her. One thing I didn't like was what I don't speak Chinese, you know, with the whatever that cult tongue is. That just really kind of, I could see where people who are anti-confiscate and don't like Lake Northcott as a writer would say, but anyway, they cut to the softball game, and one thing I don't know, I don't like the catcher's face not having the face guard like the umpire's face has. I don't understand that. Maybe, I mean, I watch softball on ESPN, college softball, and they have face guards. I presume that this is typical. I don't know why the medal isn't there. Again, here we are. Who the hell do you think you are, Jose Canseco? When was Canseco popular? Late 80s, early 90s? I mean, again, we're in this time zone thing where it's like, when exactly is this taking place and who is the audience supposed to be? Then there's a few language here that I'm not really too keen on. Again, they mentioned a Tamagotchi or Tamaguchi, whatever it's called. It's those little video pet devices that were popular in the early to mid 90s. Again, it just really kind of dates the story to me. But the art's okay by Rock Upchurch. For those of you who don't know who Rock is, he was the artist on Rat Queens. But part of the problem with this book, if there's a problem to be had, and again, this is something I got jumped on because somebody knew I was going to review this. Well, why are you reviewing this? Blake and Scott Liddell are, bad people and blah 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 blah. And Rock Up Church went, got in trouble years ago and had to leave Rat Queens because of a spousal abuse type situation or whatever. And that may be true, but again, if you're aware of that stuff and that you want to not support them for those reasons, that's your prerogative. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't review them, and it doesn't mean that other people shouldn't read them if they want to. That's your choice, and you shouldn't try to bully people or say people shouldn't be reviewing your books. We have the right not to buy. Okay. But there's stuff going on in here that story wise, I'm not that big on as far as the script goes, and it's a lot of the same problems that I again, here you go with the softball face mask without the bars across the face to protect the face. I just don't know. But overall, it's not too bad as far as the artwork goes. Then they go to get their gas and whatever, and this black kid tells them about this party they're supposed to go see, a rave or whatever. They give the address, and all of a sudden, they get out there and they get stuck in the mud, which is not the same as your car breaking down. It's getting stuck in the mud. And then, of course, when she goes to the door to find out if that's where the rave is, here's the cult member out there, and there's more than one of them. And they have to start fighting for their lives. Now, no weapons. Well, what the hell do you call a baseball bat if it's not a weapon? Now, remember, when I wrote that, what it's about, I'm actually taking what they themselves put up as their solicitation. So, it's like, what do you mean no weapons? There's your weapons right there. Something that is really interesting, though. Well, there the person's going to lose their foot, as you can see. Got yourselves caught in a bear trap. It should just snap the whole thing right through. But, okay. But you see that little Gatorade stuff. As you can see, it kind of like gives her super strength, and she can rip off the thing herself there. But it's pretty interesting, though. But whatever the red liquid does, it does it quick, but it wears off just as fast. I was Wonder Woman 10 minutes ago, which really isn't 10 minutes ago. It's more like 10 seconds ago. But, now I'm back to being a regular, witty, charming, sexy catcher with a very sore leg. Very sore leg, more like the leg is about ready to fall off, but that's beside the point. So like I said, the writing is a little bit weird. That's why I kind of like on it. But if you like the B movie type slasher movies with the girls trapped out in the woods and stuff, maybe this is your bag. And the other thing is, this book was crowdfunded originally in 2019. Here we are in 2020. So I'm not going to discuss, any more of the histories of the creators involved. We're here to judge the work. If you liked Rat Queens by Rock Upchurch, it's added image, you'll probably enjoy this book. Like I said, the script by Blake Northcott really it just feels like the dialogue and pop cultural references in the book are very outdated. It feels like these are books that should have been published in the 90s, not in 2020. And I do think it's going to hurt the viability of the book with some audiences as a result. It feels like a very generic B-movie slasher movie. But I do hope it does have a few things that are interesting. I mean, like I said, the magic Gatorade that gives the drinker ridiculous strength or whatever for a few moments. I hope that does get explained. But overall, it's a fairly silly comic that checks the basic rundown of a typical teen slasher storyline. And if that's what you like, then you'll enjoy the book, and you should check it out. But for me, it's only a 2.5-star book. Okay. Our next book, however, from Scout Preview is It Eats What Feeds It. There's an ash can which has a different cover than this one, which is currently available on the Scout Comics website. The actual book will be released at $3.99 in June or July of 2020. The writers are Max Hoven and Aaron Crow. The artist is Gabriel Lumazarek. Lumazark. Let's just say that. I hope I'm going to have to find out how to pronounce that in the future. The genre is horror, and what it's about is Francois, a stunning middle-aged woman, has developed a worsening affliction and needs a young caretaker to upkeep her lavish Creole mansion deep in the mystic bayou of Louisiana. Kenny, a teenager looking for a summer job, happily falls right into her lap. Blinded by her beauty, Kenny accepts her offer but ignores the fact that he's required to do things like slide raw meat into a slot on a bolt-locked, steel-plated attic door that he's restricted access to, among other things. But as Kenny adoration becomes love, Francois's health begins to plummet, forcing Kenny to learn the truth about her secrets before either of them is prepared. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the artwork. I like the overall tone of the art here. Again, in the very beginning of the storyline, it's a little bit cliched. The car breaks down again and he's out there. There's certain things that are just basic tropes that you wish they would avoid as writers, but okay, it is what it is. And here you are with, again, the car won't start. He goes up there and he knocks on the door because he was afraid to before, and then, she comes to the door and he's like, oh, wow. And she invites him in and they have a conversation and stuff. Now, I'm not going to get into what her affliction is and all sorts of things, but it's very interesting. It's very well written for what it is. It's a very well done, thoughtful horror comic. And while there are basic elements that are far too cliche, and the writers know it and acknowledge it, meta style in the script, like I said, the breaking down of the car thing. I mean, they even say, "Wow, could this be any more cliche type thing in there?" But you can tell they're trying to go for something a little bit deeper in context than the B-slasher movie type script that Everglade Angel presents. The artwork by Lumazark is nice and atmospheric. The lead female, Francoise, is ethereal in her appearance at times, and yet the bold red dress and some of the other visuals of her in the story that are more adult in nature leave no question as to her own decadence and devilishness, if you will. She is both a sympathetic and questionable character at the same time, which makes her very intriguing and makes the audience want to know her story. The story, to me, is very clearly influenced by Moore's Swamp Thing and by Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. I can see a lot of potential for the concept, and it really depends on how well the audience receives this book in the beginning of the series, how far it can be taken. Because of some of the weaknesses in the early part of the story and the lesser development of the character of Kenny, I can't give it a top grade book. But if the story goes beyond what I saw in the preview, and I sincerely hope that I do, then it can really potentially have a chance to be a solid hit book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars on it, and with potential to be a lot more if they manage to extend the story far enough and where I hope they're going to go with it anyway, at least where I would go with it if I were working on it. Let's take a quick back look here again. And again, you can get all these books at, hold on a second. You can get those last 2 books at scoutcomics.com. For Everglade Angels and It Eats What Feeds It. And next week we'll do probably another 3 to 5 previews for Scout. But our last book for review this week, we're saving the best for last, from Dark Horse, a classic, and that is The World of Adina, hardcover by the amazing Jean Mobius Giraud. $49.99 hardcover edition. Genre science fiction, 388 pages, ISBN number 978-1-50670-216-2. What it's about is 2 interstellar repairmen, Stell and Atan, are seeking out a lost space station and its crew when they are drawn into the body of a nearby planet and to find that an entity has been collecting a myriad host of alien beings for centuries, and now that they've arrived, the entity has determined that they can all travel to the mythical world of Adina. What the pair discover about the universe and themselves along the journey and on the planet Adina itself changes them and their lives forever and forces them into a multidimensional battle between good and evil. It is a masterpiece work by Mobius, and this edition has interviews and historical context in addition to the complete story. 5-star rating, recommended for 16 and up, classic science fiction fans. Anybody who likes Mobius, you cannot go wrong with this book. Very nice, thick hardcover. We're going to take a quick look at some of the artwork. This is pages 4 and 6, I believe, or 3 and 6. Early on in the story. And then these are a little bit later on in the book. Believe it or not, the blonde here is the same person that's the one sleeping at the top. It's just later, 2 different segments of the different story. And when you start in the story, beginning of the story, both characters are kind of supposed to be either men or non-gender specific. And as the story progresses, one becomes more masculine and the other one becomes effeminate and female as they evolve through what's going on in the storyline. I'm not going to explain the hows and whys of that, but there's a thematic structure to it that Mobius is going for in the story in conjunction to us letting go of our technologies and stuff and becoming more natural, our natural selves. And again, a little bit later, there are 5 different segments, chapters in the book, and it's kind of like this whole of humanity, or not even humanity, but just all of evolution changes with each chapter. Is both. I don't know if you guys saw everything or not. Let me go back one. There, we got that one. Like I said, the one here at top left becomes female. And you can see a little bit of feminine in the face, but earlier in the book, it's more um, not masculine, but just kind of like it could be either or, more androgynous. But this character becomes more effeminate and becomes this character here. And again, next piece there. Now, one thing I must say about this particular art book, this particular project, is Mobius's art is significantly different than what most people are used to seeing of him. He simplified the art style. Um, it's very clean and open compared to his usual style of art. He usually does a lot of cross hatching and hatching and to create depth and shading in the work. And this is very open and allowed for color more than traditional Mobius art. And then he did that partly because the original story for it was for a comic book for a oil company or a gas company in Europe, and it was only supposed to be for purposes of that audience of the employees there, and they were paying for it, but he didn't want to go too extravagantly. And as it came out, sorry about that, my microphone was in the way there. um, his mind just kind of got going and going and going, and it expanded into this huge 360 pages between 5 or 6 different stories in the storyline. Something that was supposed to be like an 8 or 10 page story for had nothing to do with comics, as the comic story medium is meant for a separate audience base entirely, which is fascinating, and that's some of the information that's in the additional book. And there's certainly plenty of detail in the line art, but every line, it's very minimalist for him, and every line is very carefully considered. Um, and that was a conscious decision on his part. And I think it makes the artwork stronger in some ways because it helps guide the vision of the story on a thematic level as the characters go through the shedding of different physical and societal contexts that define and redefine them as the story progresses. There are certain subtleties in the work, though very easily noticed and recognized as the characters change in physical form, which is like I mentioned, you know, when the characters start, they're androgynous, and then one of them becomes more masculine, one of them becomes more feminine. Um, it's very philosophical in its style. It's a very philosophical science fiction story, very much owing to the same kinds of expanded thinking as Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 and Olaf Stapledon's Last and First Men in terms of the future of humanity and our place in the universe. And maybe it's not as heady as Clarke or Stapleton, depending on your point of view, but this is comics. And for comics, it's a very intellectual story. And I think, you know, classic work that, you know, if you're into that field and you like that kind of stuff, like 2001 and the philosophical science fiction type stuff outside of comics, I think this is the kind of comic that is for you. And so that is our reviews for this evening. Let's see if we can find whoops. crowdfunded stuff, which ought to be real interesting to find. Let's see what we can find, if anything. I know I had some. I'm looking. Hmm. This is odd. No, that's not it. I wonder what happened to it. Must be on another page. Okay, well we'll find it. Okay, here we go. Share screen. Here's one of our pieces. I'm gonna go ahead and re. Okay, let's go ahead and look down a little bit more. It's a 48-page one shot in U.S. standard format with a cardstock covered book, and again, we're doing. It's a super soldier in the future. Um, they say he discovers that man's first ancestors are a final descendant, a being of ultimate evil, whatever that exactly means. The artwork feels very much in line with what we would find in. This comes out of London in the UK. It feels very British to me. Very trying to think of the word. 2000 AD, something that would appear in 2000 AD. But let's go ahead and read it. Striking from the shadows, an evil force preys on the hearts of the innocent. Its goal to lure a man who can at last prove a challenge to its own invincible champion. The quarry it seeks is Cade Seiger, a renowned swordsman who can himself barely be described as innocent. Under the command of the mysterious guild, he serves to maintain a threadbare but hardline order in a newborn age of wonder weapons. And they all look like they're wearing battle armors. uh, but the mysterious unearthed power that now impels man to blazing feats emanates from deeper in the cellars of the earth than anyone ever realized. The dark vortex, whom the ancients called Zor, has awoken and sent forth its deadly emissary, Nargun Drave, to eliminate Saigar. When the swordman dies, Zor will prove not only to have been the secret ancestor of all mankind, but existence's lone and undefeated survivor atop the throne of skulls that is the Battle Mountain. The hunt concluded, Zor will emerge once more, to devastation serving to reignite the world from scratch. that it may yield a worthier champion. However, though Siger is heavily outmatched, he is not one to shirk from a challenge. Let the battle commence. It's a it's an interesting thing. Um, there's also an art book, which is a supplemental magazine available separately or as a bundle with the comic. Uh, Now, what gets me is, the book will be a 48-page color one shot, but down here it says this will be a full. Oh, okay. The comic will be 48 pages, but the additional book will be another stapled full color 32-page book with a cardstock cover. So you get basically 80 pages of story here between the two books as a bundle. Now, they want 1,499 as fixed goal. Let's just say 1,500. They're at not quite 1,000. They got 27 days left. They might meet their campaign. They might not. You never know. Can't really say. Let me go ahead and refresh that real quick. There we go. They got 29 backers. I don't know if $1,500 is a reasonable sum that's actually going to get them the money they need to produce what they're going to produce, but we'll see. Their perks are physical copies of one comic and one art of book for $40. Estimated shipping in October of this year. The art book is $19. The comic graphic novel is $25. I think it's a little bit high priced, but who knows? Depends on how many people they can get. If they can get it one, they'll even lower the prices. Hard to say. But it's a possibility. I haven't ruled it out yet. I think part of the reason it costs so much is because you're shipping overseas from the UK to the US, and if that, I'm hoping that price includes the shipping, because I know that shipping overseas is expensive as hell. So that could be part of the problem. There, whereas if it was based in America, maybe. I don't know. Have to wait and see. Let's see what else they got, though, if anything that we can find. Okay. Here's a new one from Starcross Comics. This is Hybrids, the Sons of Gods, the complete first arc. The Book of Enoch meets Taken in this fast-paced action-adventure hero book by Luke Stone. He's got 18 days left. He's got 8 backers with 64% of $500 flexible goal. Let's go ahead and see what his video is.
Hybrids, the Sons of Gods Trash Day is an action-adventure hero story about the advent of a new superhuman species. The story includes theories surrounding the Nephilim and ancient aliens set against a fast-paced rescue attempt that exposes a deadly human trafficking ring. This series will appeal to you if you like superheroes, obscure history, Greek mythology, Nephilim, conspiracy theories, religious lore, and movies like Taken. This Kickstarter is for all 5 issues of the first arc and is to cover the print run for issue number 5. Production is nearly complete and books will ship in May. We have several great ways for you to support this project that fit a wide variety of budgets. Learn more about Hybrids, the Sons of Gods, below.
There we go. All right. Now, again, this is 5 issues. I'm not exactly sure what all you got. They got a lot of stuff here. You can get spectrofoil covers for all 5 books. You can get digital stuff for $1. You can get a Hybrids #5 digital pack for $5, physical book for $10, etc. Um, Now, part of the reason that this was brought to my attention is because one of our regular guests, Ted Davies, did a variant cover for #5. And the variant cover right here is one of the things you can get. So if you like Ted's stuff that you've seen in the past, like Albino Zulu, and you want to support that, or you saw the interview I did with Ted last week, and you saw that cool poster that he had, the frame, this is the book that he did the cover for. This is the actual thing that painting was for. Okay, and it's $15 for that particular variant. Estimated shipping in June 2020. Let's do a quick recap, though. The first book, you meet Trash Man. He's an awkward guy who has been a bit out of place. Should be out of place. We get our first glimpse of the drama through his eyes as he escapes an abduction attempt from aliens. Hybrid 2, Trashman gets his super suite, and the team gets caught up in a massive battle while attempting to thwart another abduction attempt. Hybrids #3. After bringing back a somewhat unwelcome guest, Link and the rest of the team devise a plan to break into the Hybrid engineering core to hack their system and gather vital information. And Hybrids 4. Now that the team has the files they need, they head back to base to get better acquainted with a new ally. While waiting for the green light to rescue their loved ones, some surprising facts about their situation comes to light. Now, whether or not this is your thing, I can't say. The main reason I picked it, I noticed this book was because of Ted. And I want to make sure that fans of Ted's work, whether it's Retrieve or Albino Zulu, were aware of this, and that they wanted to get the Hybrids special edition cover. That's where you can get it at. So, that was the main thing there for me. I'm not entirely sure I'm interested yet, but we got 18 days. I'll probably I'll review it again a little bit more and check the perks out a little bit more before I say yay or nay. We've got 2.5 weeks left. There might be a format that I want. It's $30 for the complete physical arc, and I don't know what Serafina is, but it doesn't matter. I'd have to sit there and find out if I was going to get the whole 5 issues, if I could get the variant from Ted or not. I'll have to contact them and ask about that, but we'll see. And that'll conclude our Indiegogo stuff for this week as well. So, with that being said, we're going to close up our show right away here, if I can get this screen shared. There we go. And as always, there we go. In accordance with the new copy regulations, this episode was intended for ages 16 and up. While some content will be featured will be kid-friendly and is kid-friendly, the context of the episode is to address adults and inform them of said content for them to research as consumers in service of their youth. And there's the possibility of adult language on the episode as well, which there was, but between my language or some of the language that was used in some of the comics that you got to see on the screen. So rated TV 16 and up. If you want to reach me, you can reach me on Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven, DeviantArt at DeviantArt.com/BrightRaven, here on YouTube at Quote the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven, at Gmail at Quote the Raven lbr72@gmail.com, or if you must, you can try Yahoo at Yahoo, lewisbroodraven@yahoo.com. That would be my Yahoo mail address. The podcast normally airs on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Although sometimes I do run additional episodes. So if you like this episode or you want to continue to watch, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit the subscribe button for further updates as to when our next shows will be. This weekend, I'm hoping, well, no, not this weekend, next weekend, for Memorial Day weekend, I think it is. Let me check my calendar real quick here. Yeah, more like the Memorial Day weekend at the end of the month. We'll be having a multi-day drawing event again. But as for this weekend, let me just say, Happy Armed Forces Day for all of our servicemen and women, retired and active duty this weekend. Thank you for serving our country, as always, and doing what you do. And whoops, we got one more thing here. If my darn thing will set, there we go. My computer's being fussy again. But alrighty, that should cover us for the day then. So until then, we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, and